Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Northwest Pizza and Pasta Company, located at 1585 Siskiyou Boulevard in Ashland, Oregon. Serving pizza, wings, salads, burgers, sandwiches, pasta, and much, much more. Northwest Pizza can handle your individual lunch or the celebration for your favorite team or organization. Go see Morgan and the crew and tell them the Running Raiders sent you. And now we're back with the Running Raiders. Once again, I'm TJ Caughell. To my right is Aden Hawes. To my immediate left on the ground floor is Coy Thomas Call watching his videos. To his left is Ani Sairam. And our special guest today is Coach Gary Kloppenburg.
Thank you.
A special assistant to the SOU Women's Raiders basketball program, and also an assistant coach for the Indiana Fever.
Have been, yes, last summer.
Coach, thanks for being with us today.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited when Aden gave me the news that you were going to come in and sit down with us, and we talked about it, and we were just really excited to get some of your knowledge, and we know you've been doing this for a long time. How was it in Indiana this past summer?
It was rough. It was a situation where I came in 10 games into the season as an interim assistant coach because they had fired the head coach. And then their assistant that was on staff took over, and he wanted me to come in and at least help him the rest of the season. But it was really difficult just because it was a rebuilding situation. A lot of rookies. I think we had 7 rookies out of the 12 roster, which is really difficult at the pro level to try to win with that many rookies. I mean, and we didn't win. We had a very poor record, but I felt like they got a lot of experience. It was a young team that got a lot of experience, and it's just that's part of the pro game is getting the experience, learning the pro game is that you have so many college players coming in. And it's just the pros it's a totally different game to really relearn how to play from college. So I think that's what happened, and they should be a lot better. I think that Lynn Dunn, who took over as their president GM, knows how to build a team. I think she'll definitely get it going out there.
7 rookies is a lot.
Yeah.
In any organization, any level.
Yeah, she had a lot of draft picks as she was trying to rebuild. So she traded away some established decent players to get the pick. So, that's kind of how you have to rebuild at the pro level, because you get the rookies, you get them for 4 or 5 years before their contract comes back up. So you have a chance to build with a core. And then usually that second year, those rookies come back. They're a lot better. A lot of them are playing. They'll go overseas and play, get experience. That 1 year older at the pro level, the level, the improvement can be really great. So I would think this following year, they'll be better. I mean, you got to look. Coach Dunn, it's a 3 to 5 year process at the pro level. When you hit rock bottom and you're trying to rebuild. And you look at any sport, any pro sport, that's kind of how it is. It's going to take you 3 years minimum to get back in maybe a playoff situation, and then 5 to maybe get back towards being in a championship conversation.
It seems like this has been a fairly consistent theme to where you're brought in kind of to right the ship. I don't know.
I don't know if that happened, but this year it was really hard, difficult. But I've done several times. I've taken, been an interim, taken over as a head coach on the interim basis. A couple of times in Seattle I did, and I was a head coach in Tulsa for 2 years with the Tulsa Shock before I was out, and they actually moved that team. They ended up being the Dallas Wings, several years ago. So. Yeah, I guess if you're at the pro level long enough, you pretty much go through everything. I mean, 3 years. I was 3 years in the NBA with the Bobcats, and I can't even remember how many total years in the WNBA. So with several different teams. So I've probably seen it all, every situation, the good, bad, and the ugly.
So I do want to mention that you won the World Championship with the 2020 Seattle Storm. That had to be an incredible experience.
We did. It was a unique situation because the head coach, Dan Hughes, it was the bubble year, 2020, so they moved the whole league to the IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. So very unique situation, and they would not let him go into the bubble because he had the previous year was recovering from cancer, and there were some players as well that they wouldn't, because of the situation at that time with COVID and not really knowing the uncertainty about how that could affect people's health. They didn't let him go down there, so I took over for that summer. It was a shortened season down there in the bubble, and very unique, just historically unique situation. I mean, nothing probably we'll ever see again, or it was everybody. It was the league did a really good job of just having a season. I think the WNBA that year as well as the NBA, they had their own bubble in Orlando, and it was just everybody was kind of figuring it out on the fly. But really fascinating experience to go through, and we fortunately had a really good team. And in that situation, they it was just basketball. You'd go to you'd play every other day pretty much through the season, because it was a 22-game season, a short season. So it was like 2 months we were down there total.
Wow, yeah.
22 games, and then we had 6 playoff games that we won all those. So it was just a unique situation, but just basketball. When you'd practice, and next day you'd play, and we would play. They timed the game so that you would play during your time zone. So our home games, since we were West Coast, were at 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
In Florida, so that they could be broadcast in prime time on the West Coast. So it was just a lot of unique situations. That down there they built. Actually, I think it was used to be a former animation studio in Sarasota that they converted into 2 courts, and that's where we played. No fans, just staff and broadcasting staff and support staff. But I think we had 2 fans. Megan Rapinoe was down there quite a while because as Bird's partner, so she was our top fan. We had a couple of fans, but it was a pretty amazing summer, very memorable.
So did you go the entire time without your family then, or were families allowed in the bubble?
No,
that's
families,
what I thought.
Yeah. It was just very closed. Yeah, you couldn't not leave. We actually took a couple of field trips, went to the beach once, and or a couple times to the beach when we had one extra day off, but that was it. You couldn't leave. Everything was right there. We stayed in a hotel right on campus, and then they got bicycles for everybody, so everybody would ride their bike to the gym. It was like about a mile away, and on your practice days, you go over there and practice, and then game days you would you'd have a shoot around at the school, and then they'd bus you over to the gym. It was probably 5 or 6 miles away from the campus, but so that was kind of our routine that we got into. And we had a veteran team that was very good. Obviously we had some great players with Sue Bird and Stewart. We just had a really Jewel Lloyd. We had a really great team, but they also really bought into what we were trying to do at both ends of the floor, and I think they really executed it well. And I think we dominated. When we got to the finals, we won 6 straight. The semis we swept, and then the finals we swept, and the championship game we won, I think, by 30.
Wow, yeah, I do remember that.
Peaking and playing really well with that team. So it was a satisfying experience as a coach, obviously, that to be able to win that, and in those circumstances, especially, with everything that was going on that summer as well.
The world was in turmoil,
it
yeah.
was. And the league and the women of the league were, they were really out front.
Mm-hmm.
In that summer, there was so much going on with the George
Yeah.
Floyd, say her name, the whole movement. I think they really stepped up to show what they represented as a league and as a group of women that are basically 80% Black players. So I think they, they had several things they did really, I think, impacted America.
I agree. Yeah.
Warnock, the senator from Georgia, was an unknown until one time all the players got together, wore Vote Warnock shirts, as their warm-up shirt, and then now worldwide, everybody knows who Warnock is, and he ended up, winning it. So I think they did in a very small league, 144 players, really, I think, made a major impact in trying to help promote some progress across the board for people, and people of color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have an instrumental role in that too, as a leader of those women. Can you talk about a little bit how that role was for you?
It was hard, because there was so much turmoil and so much division. If you remember that summer, the debate, that debate, presidential debate, and just the vitriol and the rhetoric that was coming out. I mean, and our players really felt it. I remember we had a couple of meetings with our team, and they were, almost in tears about how to deal with, how can they deal with it? We had one player, I remember Alicia Clark she was from Tennessee, and, she went to Middle Tennessee State, and she said her whole town, and she was a Black player, her town was just, the whole Trump flag, just very, very divisive, and it was really disturbing for a lot of our players. It was just what they had to face, with that, to confront that kind of those reactionary forces, which in my mind, that's what it is people, a lot of people that don't really want to see the U.S. or the country progress, in any way. And I think we're still obviously fighting that, but I think that's what they were very out front. And, they I thought were, stepped up and really took the lead, even more so than the NBA guys. I mean, they did as well, but I think that WNBA that summer and the players and their commitment to trying to create some momentum for some progress, in every aspect of American life, I think it was monumental. And I think we're still seeing, the fruits and the positive influence that league had that year.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It felt like the women did take the lead, and then the men kind of followed. Yeah. And we've actually talked about this with a few of our college student athletes. Just about social issues, I guess you could say. Do you feel like the progress is still continuing? Because I'm hopeful, and I think it is, but some of our student athletes have felt like we're not seeing as much progress as we need.
I mean, I think it's it's slow. It's a slow process. I just think just because there's some deep-seated historical issues within this country that I think you're always going to be dealing with, and so I think it's going to be it's going to be slow. I think I think Martin Luther King, one of his quotes is something like the moral arc bends towards justice, but it's a long process. At some point, I think you have to just keep trying to push for an equality and justice for equal chance for people, and we know that we don't have that yet. And I think we have to. I think the young people of today, the young students, like the students on this campus, are really the hope to try to, push that momentum that way. And I think we're seeing it slowly. I think you're seeing people take a look at, some of the rhetoric and propaganda that's being pushed out at them and just rejecting it. I think especially young people that are educated, they know they have those critical thinking skills that, okay, wait a minute. I can see, through all this and see what a good path would be forward to try to help, everybody, really. I think that's the bottom line is, you want to push towards an egalitarian society to help so everybody has an equal opportunity. And I think it's going to be slow, but I think it's a situation where you got to keep trying to push whenever you can, and it was interesting. My son-in-law, the trainer, he's a trainer for the football team. He was telling me, one of their trips, I think to Montana Tech, they experienced just like blatant racism from the fans, from the opposing team. I mean, they're black players on the SOU football team, experiencing direct racism from that crowd. And I'm like, this, that's where I think, the league, the leaders in the league, the AD should step up. There's got to be some way that's not acceptable. And I think that's a small example of, what could be done, to react to things like that. And I know even when we went women's basketball last year to Lewis and Clark, a couple of the black players experienced some racism there as well. So you see it, they're experiencing it directly, what's going on. And I think that's where our leaders of the universities and the leaders of the athletic department, I think, have to really step in and make a statement and not allow that, whatever that looks like, that needs to happen,
Right. Yeah. Cause like you said, progress is slow, and if everyone's taken a small step, I see that being a big step for everyone. And part of the inspiration for the podcast was to give students an opportunity to share their experiences for situations like this. And so for you to share that's really important. So thanks for talking about that.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of progress, I know it's pretty obvious to me that the WNBA itself has grown tremendously just in the last 10 or plus years. What role, if any, do you think does the NBA have to help continue to grow WNBA game?
Yeah, and I think the NBA players have been really influential and very positive in helping the women. There's so much negativity towards women. I mean, when you look at women in general in our society, they don't. The respect isn't there across the board. I mean, you look at their salaries are lower. The ability to become leaders of companies is lower. So I think so these guys are well respected athletes. They can really impact that, not only with a league like the WNBA, but in society in general. And so I think they're always very supportive. All the top players and across the board, NBA guys have been really supportive of the WNBA to help it grow.
Right. I just mean, what specifically? I think we all can agree that there's a discrepancy. But what in particular can the league do? What needs to be done to expand the league, to make the salary gap shrink, to give them more benefits, better travel, all of that,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think there's some improvement. It's slow, but part of it, is just getting the media exposure, and that's improving as far as getting, having games on television, being supported by the, mainstream media, ESPN. I think I've seen improvement in that, that the games a lot more games are on. And so I think that's where we're seeing some progress. The salaries have gone up. I think it's just going to be a slow process to get it. The league is a 36 game league. It's probably not going to generate as much income right now, but I think it's growing. And the president the president who's been in a couple of years is doing a really good job trying to accelerate the exposure, enhance the benefits of players, and so they don't have to go overseas. So we don't have situations like what Griner is going through right now, where where players could stay. I think more and more players, you see them staying home. They're getting some media contracts to help out, or they're getting within their local markets. They're being able to make a living in the off season and don't have to go play overseas, and they can be ready for the WNBA season.
Right. In your opinion, what would be an ideal amount of teams to expand to that wouldn't, be too much and wouldn't take away from any of the current teams? And what would be an ideal amount of regular season games to maybe expand or have a goal towards?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think that's what the league's been pretty conservative about expansion, and I think that's smart because you don't want to dilute that talent pool. But I feel like the league could go at least a couple more teams in the next couple of years and not lose its talent level, because there's a lot of good players. There's more good players. I think what we found in the women's game in these past 10 years, there's, because of the interest, because of the development of young players, there's just a lot more good players coming out into college. I mean, you see today as a mid-level team like Marquette almost beats UCLA, and you see you see some really good mid-level teams that are right there with those top teams. So I think that the parity is becoming more enhanced with the women's game, and that translates to the pro level as well. And I think next year the league's going to 40 games. So that's a pretty good number.
Wow.
40 regular season, and then, playoffs. It's an expanded playoff now where there's, it's 2 out of 3 first round, then 3 out of 5. So, the winning team's going to end up playing, maybe close to 48 or 50 games when it's all done. So I think that's, again, this progress. And I think, when I first started in the WNBA, I was with the expansion team Seattle with Lynn Dunn, and it was the progress of the league and just the interest now is just it's expanded 100-fold since then. So and that's maybe 20 years. So I think it's still a very young league when you compare it to the NBA and where the NBA is at now. The NBA struggled. There were times when the NBA really struggled early on, even in the 80s. The fan base was gone. They had all kinds of issues, and now you see what a tremendous league it is. So I think that's where, as a model, I think that's what the WNBA can use, and then more and more, I think, as people see what a great game the women's game is. I mean, really, when you look at, I always felt like the skill level is really similar to the men's level, other than the power game up high around the rim. But you look at the individual skills, the shooting stats, free throw, 3-point, 2-point, is really very equal if you look at the league across the board to even the NBA, if you want to just look at those stats. So the skill level is there. It's getting even better. Right. And, I think it's exciting.
Oh, yeah. I think the typical, knowledgeable basketball fan has an appreciation for it. I think it's more, like you said, just the meatheads who like watching dunks or, you know what I mean, who don't appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's like anything we see in our society. There's a vocal minority online, or however they get their point across, that gets an inordinate amount of attention. But I think generally the majority of the true fan, they see that, hey, this is, they're looking at this as great progress for women's basketball and women. The progress of women in general in our society,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd like to hear a little more about your story. So you started as an assistant coach at Feather River for the men, is that correct?
Man, that's really going back there far. Yeah. Feather River. Yeah. Cause I played there back too many years to remember now, but, and that's kind of where I started out, cause I knew the head coach, and got in there as an assistant, and then I took over there for a couple of years and was a JC coach. I ended up over at Lassen, which is in near Feather River in Susanville, which isn't, they're not far apart up in the California mountains, but had some really good teams there. I think we won back-to-back state championships, 93 and 94 in California.
That's impressive.
And it was fun, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I coached the men down there as well. We had some good teams. So that's where I was before I got into the to the pro level.
Oh, wow. You went from JUCO to the pro?
Yeah, I went to the old CBA is where I kind of started in the pros. I wanted to try to take on the challenge of see if I could do anything at the pro level. My father was a pro, with Sonics and, longtime assistant. So I kind of was familiar, with the pro game. And I had a friend who had taken a team in the CBA that I had a chance to go with. So that's kind of how I started in the pro game, then got with Lynn Dunn. I actually would coach in the CBA in the regular season, then got with Seattle Storm with Lynn Dunn in the summer season. That's kind of how I got into the WNBA and got going. And, it's anything. I think we had a little bit of success. We kept getting better. And, that's one thing with the pros. If you can establish, if you can bring something to help your program win a little bit more, then, you got a chance to stay in there. And it's kind of what happened with that situation. I usually took over, was in charge of the pressure defense. So early on, we were trying to do a lot of disruptive pressure defense and with some success. So I think that's kind of what enabled me to stay in there for so long,
We talked actually with Carlotta about that. Every place she's gone, they won more. They improved a little better. They got a little better. So for you to say, if you can just bring a little something to win a few more games, then you'll keep going. Was that always your vision to be in the pro game, or did it just kind of happen?
It kind of, I think, I think I really wanted that challenge, so it just, and when the opportunity came up, it's kind of scary because I obviously had a really good college job, and to leave that, sometimes it's, it's a leap of faith, but you got it. I think back then you want to try it. It's more the challenge. And, if you fall flat on your face, so be it, but I think that's when you stop playing and you're a competitive player, then coaching is kind of the next thing, and you're just as competitive.
Right.
So it comes out. That's how it comes out. You always want to be challenging yourself see what you can do at a higher level, so.
Yeah, I would love to hear you compare playing and coaching, because for me, I was a head coach for a short time, but when you're a head coach, in some ways you have more control over everything, right? You have a hand, you're overseeing everything, but then you get to the game and you have no control over anything that happens. And it's kind of a weird dynamic in that way, that you're responsible for everything, but you kind of have less control over everything.
Yeah.
How was that?
No doubt. Yeah. Sometimes you feel like, oh my God, your players are just, and you're playing against really good players. You're like, man, just, like you can't stop somebody, or, it's usually those momentum things. It's like, God, you feel like, well, how are you going to stop it?
Right.
It's like a wave, getting crushed if you go, body surfing, but I think that's the challenge with coaching, is that you put your, you put your imprint on your team, that they can, whether they're out there, you can't play for them. So, but you can give them that tough, help them develop that toughness, that attitude, and develop their skills to a point where they're always going to be competitive at both ends of the floor. And, obviously college, the key thing is the recruiting, getting decent players. But then when you get them, I think molding them, they're always, they're young and impressionable. And I think you can help them. You have to help them get better on the court, try to help them maneuver through life at a young age is, it's hard. You sometimes forget. I mean, you 18 to 22, man, can be, there's a lot of stuff going on. You haven't really figured it out,
Right.
so if you're in a situation where you have a good coach that can help guide you and push you and help you develop, I think that's kind of the rewarding thing at the college level, I think, for a coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done a lot of different jobs in my life, and nothing has been harder than coaching college basketball. For you, I just want to hear a little bit about your relationship with Carlotta. Is that obviously I'm assuming you're really close, and you have a good relationship, but as far as the basketball side, was coaching something that you wanted for her or you hoped for her, or is it just something
she kind of gravitated towards it because she was a pretty decent college player, not great, but she really worked hard. She had a really good work ethic. Played at Ventura JC, did decent there, and played at Point Loma, but she had a passion for it. I think the couple of my early years coaching, or a couple of my stints in the WNBA, she'd come in as a intern. Indiana, she came one year and helped out. Tulsa, for a couple of years, she was an intern. So I think she kind of gravitated. She saw that challenge, and again, she was a competitive player, and I think, and very intelligent, loved the game. So I think she just kind of gravitated towards it, and I think it shows she enjoys it. I mean, and she's really a good, really very good mentor for her young players as well. So, I'm proud of what she's been able to accomplish, and I think she's got a really good demeanor. I think she doesn't let anything slide, and yet she knows that it's got to be fun too. And I think that's when you have that, that's where you can put together a really good team. Where it's fun. Right. It's hard work, and yet it's fun and challenging as well. So
she's great at it. I mean, from as the little that I'm able to see.
Yes.
Building that culture, like you said, of all the things you're just talking about, molding young women, and our head coach, Coach Zozol, is also excellent at it. So I think Southern Oregon University is in great hands right now.
Absolutely. Both programs have very good leadership. Matt as well. I think it's just it's a unique situation where everybody seems like they get along really well, and I think players and students they pick up on that. They know that, hey, these guys have, from the top down, have my best interest at heart, and I think it's reflected in the teams and how they play and compose themselves.
Yeah.
For you and your coaching career, I know we talked about it a little, how it started, but was that something you knew you wanted to do, or was there anything that made you gravitate toward, or was it more spontaneous, like you just happened to get in
there? Probably similar. I kind of grew up with it because my dad was a college coach, so I grew up around it. And he was kind of a forerunner to the pressure defensive system. So all the clinics when I was a young player, I'd be the demonstrator in, and later on I'd go help him. He was doing some clinics all around the world, so several times I'd go with him to Europe. We went as far as Japan, Iceland, Europe, South America, to do clinics to promote the SOS pressure defense. So it kind of became, it was sort of a natural progression to get into coaching for me as well.
Can you talk a little bit about that vaunted SOS defense? I know we had talked to Carlotta a little bit about that before, but she had given the credit to your dad about how he was sort of the inventor, so to speak, of it. Could you just talk about the basic idea of it and what it entails?
Yeah, and I think he goes way back. Now he's obviously a retired coach, but his mentors back in the day were like Henry Iba and these like hardcore defensive guys that didn't want you to score over 30 points a game, back then. So
Right.
so he over the years kept developing, kind of a disruptive system. And I think when, he got into the NBA, it sort of honed, because the players were so good. I think he even developed it even more about, okay, how do you disrupt players that are so good?
Right.
What kind of a system or what kind of weapons do you have to do that? And so I think that it's sort of, developed. And now to me, it's like, and I think every coach kind of can read the book or watch the videos and try to take what they can from that and put it into their own system. I think that's kind of how it's evolved now. Is a lot of coaches, you see a lot of schemes really, I think, came from some of his early days in the NBA, like icing the screen and rolls, trapping screen and rolls, fronting the post, trapping from the baseline, several constant jump switching, a lot of these things that you take for granted now. Really, he early on in some of the early NBA teams he was with started to implement some of those things, and now they're just part of that NBA defensive system that you see.
Right.
There are a guy like Ron Adams, who was very close to my father, a great coach for the Golden State Warriors. You see a lot of those concepts that they use, especially a few years back when he was on the bench and coaching. But
Isn't he still with the team?
He's with them, and I think he's more a consultant, helping out, but he's not on the bench anymore. But
okay.
I think there's several instances. I mean, I think you can see the influence that he had, and he's had some coaches tell him that's the case. That there's a lot of those concepts that are utilized, and now it's they're kind of ingrained in. So he probably won't get credit, but they're ingrained characteristics or fundamentals that are in the game now that I think came from that SOS pressure system. I remember back, one of the things they used to try to do with the Utah Jazz with Stockton is they use the shadow pressure, they try to get it out of his hands and don't let him get it back. And it was effective, and that's one of the great all-time point guards they were able to disrupt. And so there's just some, I think, things that are, you kind of take for granted that have come from those concepts early on.
Yeah. It helps when you have Gary Payton too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He was like, he was the epitome of a SOS pressure player, Yeah. And that was, one thing he was always, always stressed, even at the college level. Hey, you want the perfect SOS pressure D team would be guys, like for college, it'd be guys 6'3" to 6'7" that are just athletes, great athletes that you teach them the system where they can jump switch everything, pressure, trap, rotate, fly around, and then I think that's, some of those UNLV teams did that back when Tark was there. And my dad actually coached with him one year back in the 80s. And he had those, he developed that kind of pressure, flying around system, trapping, rotating. So you've had it through, you'll see teams occasionally that really implement a lot of those fundamentals that come from the SOS system.
What does that stand for again? SOS?
The
acronym?
It's set, on, smother is one of them, so on the ball. And I'll have to look it up. There's several acronyms that's the main one. Yeah. Set, on, smother. So, which are the individual on ball defensive fundamentals you want to start with, So, but I think what is unique about it is it's all based on individual fundamentals. So you'll see even Carlotta's practices, a lot of emphasis on always reviewing individual fundamentals on the ball, off the ball, all your individual fundamentals, because then it fits it fits in with your team. Once you have developed pretty good individual fundamental players defensively that understand the intensity and how hard you have to play as an individual, then the team concepts all fit pretty well, you know.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you were part of creating something that has revolutionized the game, you know, over a long period of time.
I mean,
incredible.
It's pretty neat, you know. I mean, you know, there's a lot of different ways to win, and you know, it's one, you know, this is one system and philosophical viewpoint. But I think it, you know, you can draw from it, no matter what you want to do with your team. You can draw from, you know, a system like that really, it's a core, at its core, it's a fundamental, teaching the fundamentals at the individual level. And then as you know, progress to your team defense, now you can really get into more advanced situations. I mean, some of the things we did, even when I was at Seattle with the Storm, you know, trapping screen and rolls, trapping all the step ups, mixing it up, trapping some mid screen and rolls, some horns, always having, you know, trapping the elbow entries. You know, you didn't do it all the time, but you had it in your plans. You know, you had it in your weapon, your system that you could do it. You know, front in the post, trapping, like with Griner. You know, we'd fronter, we'd trap from the baseline. Sometimes we'd trap from the wings and rotate. We'd trap from the top. So you put those great players, you have to instill some doubt into them. You know, you may not be able to stop them, but you want to just, if you can just disrupt those good teams just enough, and you have a pretty good team too that can score, it might be just enough to get you over the hump. And I think that's in such a thin margin for error at those levels with everybody's pretty equal in talent. If you have a couple things that you can do, there might be one or two possessions a game that change it. That's the difference in winning and losing, you know. So I think that's the beauty of having that. And I always felt like, well, we can always adjust, and we can go back, you know, we can become more conservative if we have to, or we can ramp it up and really be an all-out disruptive team. So I think that's what I like about it, is that gives you a lot of weapons, and you're not just stuck on, oh shoot, now what? Well, we don't have anything. We don't have anything to stop this guy. You know, we'd have a scheme for a star player if they started getting hot, you know, where we'd come on the catch. We were coming from different areas of the floor to try to get it out of their hands. So, you know, I think you have to have that's my philosophy, is you know, you want to have those weaponry in your system that you could use, you know, at certain times.
Is there any spot on the floor that you don't double from?
I mean, you can, yeah.
I'm wondering honestly, because I know some people are like, don't double from the corner, or don't double from the top. You know, I was wondering
the top, right?
if there's any one where you're like, this just can't work.
I mean, you really like to get it in the sideline areas, you know, the off the middle, because then you can really sit, you know, we call it the weak side eye, where you can really, which is your weak side defense, you can set that. They can be set up ready to rotate. You know, the middle is a lot more difficult. You can do it, and we have, you know, but you really have to have players that can really pre-rotate, be there, you know, on that next catch. And that's, you know, that's something you work on. If you want to use more middle, it's more difficult though. Usually we try to get it, you know, the corner's an automatic trap anytime they catch in the corner. And then, you know, you have your anytime sideline, we can trap some screen and rolls on the side. Full court pressure anytime we get it towards the corners or towards the half court corner line those are all really good areas to trap in. So yeah, you definitely have some target areas you're trying to get the ball to get your trap. And then I think it's, you know, the rotations behind it are really the most important thing, is flying and the ball's in the air, flying out of there, getting there, flying out of the trap, getting there on the next pass. So 2 passes away, you're out of it, back match up. And then you you can blow up a lot of offenses. I mean, I think one part of his book, I mean, and he has one video and it's really good. It's pretty old now, but how to disrupt every offense, the zipper play, the hawk, all those old offenses. And you could really design, how to disrupt any kind of offense. Now, I will say is more difficult now, I think, in the modern game because of the 5-out spread game. It's like the old passing game. You remember where everybody was spread out and it's just random. To me, that's the most challenging offenses to guard because the ball kind of stays up in the middle of the floor. It's moving. The court is really spread. But, to me, that's where your individual defense really has to kick in. And then you still have your trap chances, trapping at baseline, post ups, trapping. So you still have those opportunities. But that, to me, creates a lot more difficulty for the modern defenses, I think, is the 5-out game now.
A lot of teams do that.
Yeah.
So with your team's personnel speaking, would you just try to get whoever was on your team to buy into that system, or would you specifically try and get players who would do well in that system?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a coach, you talking about like a college
or even the program. I mean, you got to bring in free agents and whatnot, drafting and trades. Like, would you look for athleticism, or would you just try to get the best player and have them buy into that type of
part of it's both, I think, because I mean, obviously you got to be able to score, and I think you can teach, and all players at that level, they want to win. So I think part of it is selling them on, hey, why do we want to do this? Here's the advantages for us to do it. And you work on you put your system in. And I think, there's always that flexibility. You have to be able to adapt to what you have out there too. So, there were certain teams, certain groups we'd put out, we wouldn't be as disruptive. And then, but the certain groups could be more disruptive. So I think as a coach, you don't want to put your players in an uncomfortable situation doing stuff that maybe they're not as good at. But I think you teach your systems to everybody. And then I think, just depending on your personnel, how many can do it, and that usually, you like at the pro level, I always like to play 9 or 10 players and really get them confident in what they're doing, give the bench, ownership of, hey, you guys are, we're not going to drop off. When you guys come in, you're going to really pick us up. Maybe you guys come in, you're the disruptive team. You're the full court pressuring team. So you try to instill that pride in that group coming in. So I think there's a lot that goes into teaching and getting players to really believe in what you're doing,
Yeah, I just asked that because when I think of a player like Sue Bird, who's like a complete stud offensively, and I think of her just more like a solid defensive type player. I don't think of her per se, speaking to the Storm specifically, as like someone who's gonna fly around and trap and be super disruptive. I mean, obviously you have other athletic guards like Lloyd and January who are probably more capable of doing that. That's why I ask, like, is it more of like a scheme specific, game to game, personnel, or just overall buy-in?
Yeah, and then I think she was so smart, even though she was just a solid individual defender, but she was really good at was when we get her on the weak side, and so she was really good at anticipating rotations out of the eye. She'd usually be, and we'd do a lot with her where when we'd switch with her, she would switch and scram and stay high all the time. So it was kind of a unique situation with her, but she was really good at kind of anchoring the backside. So we'd have, maybe Stewart or Lloyd or, one of our quicker guards in that trap area on the side, and she'd be in the eye ready, and she would pick off a lot of passes or get a lot of deflections from that weak side spot. So, it was, I think that, and then, sometimes we would, whoever she was guarding, we would, okay, let's turn this into a trap. So anybody she was guarding, we'd turn that into a trap and rotate out of it, with our backside. So I think there's even, you adapt to your personnel and what they can and can't do, to try to maximize and still be a disruptive pressure D team. And,
Right.
We scored a lot that one year. I mean, the 2020 team, I think, was number one in defense, number one in forced turnovers, number one in points off turnovers. So as good as we were, we still scored a lot off of our defense, our pressure defense. So anytime you can get some easy baskets like that at every level, I mean, it just makes life a lot easier as a coach,
Yeah.
What role does analytics play in the WNBA? Like in the last couple of years, you've seen the NBA implement that to mainly like inside the paint and three. And how does over the years of like analytics change your philosophies and coaching?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think it's the same, same at the WNBA level, and I think that's why you're seeing so many more threes. Teams are shooting higher number of threes. Emphasis on the threes. Emphasis on getting to the free throw line. I think with our league, you still have some really good post players too. That it's not as the NBA to me has become a 5-out league, whereas our league, we still have some really dominant inside players that will throw it into. So it's not quite as spread out. I think in general the league is offensively as the NBA, just because of you have some really good post players. You got to go down through them, which I like. Go through post players, because if you can't stop them, it's a high percentage shot down there for them. They're going to either get fouled or score, and it's a two, but it's still a bucket. So
Right.
Sets up offensive rebounding and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad you brought that up. One thing I noticed, because I watch a lot of WNBA basketball, is there's a lot more mid-range shots, I think, than I see in the NBA. And I was just curious, why do you think, not that it's a bad thing. I mean, obviously, I think we can all agree that the mid-range is still a good shot when in the right time and situation. But why do you think that is? Or do you notice that?
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious to see, the percentages on that. But I would, off the top of my head, I would say, they're probably more mid-range game. And I think our league, we have some really good slashing. The most athletic players it seems like in our league, I would say, are the twos and threes, the wings. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those players are just very good at slashing, either getting to the rim or quick pull-ups. And the quick pull-up for a lot of them is a very high percentage shot. So I think if you probably looked at percentage-wise, it's probably pretty close to, it's percentage-wise taking a three as it taking a mid-range two. So I think, I don't think it's dead. It was dead in the NBA a few years ago, and I think you'll see it seems like it's coming back because those are good shots. For some guys, a mid-range jumper is like a layup for them because they're wide open rather than going in against a big where you're going to get contested. So I think it's kind of, it's mediated a little bit where, even in the NBA that's a good shot because you're so spread out now and teams are closing out to run you off the 3-point line that shot is there. And those guys are very prolific at making them, I think,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, especially just like in ISO situations where you're mid-posting your player or you have a mismatch. Like you said, Kevin Durant's one of the better ones. And then in the WNBA, there's Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum. I mean, Diggin Smith. Like it seems like, and I just meant when I asked that, like it just seems like the shot is taken more. Not that it's a worse shot for them necessarily or anything. It just seems like, I was asking more like, is it something that is talked about and is worked on a lot, or is it more just it happens through the course of a game? And what?
Yeah, I think it's that. I don't feel like our league like overly analyzes, hey, we got to have three, a layup or a free throw.
Right.
It's like, let's get the best, get a good shot, whether it be a two or a three. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I was wondering, has there ever been a time during your coaching career when you've seen another coach running your defense and found something new that you implemented into yours? Does that ever happen for you?
I mean, yeah, you trying to think specifically, but you see, a lot. It's like a lot of coaches. It's copycat. What could work? What could work. So, yeah, no question. I mean, we've seen, especially with the Seattle team, we were so good offensively that we saw some teams really trying to disrupt, coming and trapping Stewart on all her catches in the post, and it was disruptive. Anytime you face or trap. One team, Chicago, we always had a lot of trouble with them, but they'd put Kalia Copper on Bird, and she would just hawk her, wouldn't let her, when she gave it up, she wouldn't let her catch it. And we had a lot of, and she was such a focal point, or so important to offensive flow that it disrupted our team. So I think any good coach, and especially there's always the pro level, they're all such good coaches that they have some of those weapons in, maybe not to the degree that we did as far as a total system, but game to game, you're gonna see some ways that they're gonna try to disrupt you.
I know we've asked you a lot about your defensive philosophy and overall ideology, but what about offensively? I know you've said pretty adamantly that you still need to score even if you're a good defensive team. What's your overall thoughts on your specific offensive philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that team in 2020, and then obviously when you're a head coach, you kind of you're able to implement your ideology onto a team, both sides of the ball, and I felt that team, I remember just always emphasizing with that team, let's run everything. Let's run on everything. Made shots, missed shot, turnover, because we had a really good early offensive flow. And I remember with that team, look, we don't want to set up. We don't want to run plays. We want everything is a push, a quick drag, a quick swing into your screen and roll flow, your flow game. And that system had been in with that team. And I think I guess the best thing I did with that team is not screw them up or try to overcoach them, because we had really good systems in. But I think that emphasis came, that I tried to keep always influencing them. Look, we were always running, and we had a lot of different early flow situations where we could try to score, and the spacing was really good where we filled all our spots, and you had great individual players. When you put them in that kind of space, they're going to make plays. So I think that's what I would, I try to teach the teams is an early flow. Obviously you have to have a good half court offenses as well, because you're not always running, but I think you want to keep emphasizing it's so hard to defend is when you're always on the run, even on a made, you're taking it out quick. You're looking ahead. You're trying to kick ahead. You have your post runner. You have your quick drag. Now especially if you have a good guard, that's a good decision maker. They're right down in the paint. A drive and kick. So I think that's probably would be my offensive philosophy going forward. Really up tempo offense, pressure D, up tempo O. You don't always get it exactly how you want as a coach, but I think that's what you try to implement at both ends.
Yeah, it seems like the pro game specifically is more like you said about transition and quick triggers like the drag and the flip or whatever you do, and then quick triggers in the half court.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you break down even NBA now, everything is spread. Everything starts with a quick screen roll, a quick pin away, depending on what you have, or a quick step up. Now you're in, and the players are so good. If they get half a step, if they're 2-on-1, or you're in a drop coverage, and those guys are going to make that. That's where they can make that shot right there or drive, and if they get help, they kick it out. So I think in some ways, it's become a lot more simple, where the the great individual skills of the players can be, that really are shown, and then the skill level. I mean, I think just players and their ability to shoot, because of the emphasis on threes, you see young players coming up that, you have to be able to shoot, or if not, you have another special skill that separates you and you can play. But, generally nowadays you have to be able to shoot the ball. You look at the Lakers, like that's where they're struggling right now. They have some great players, but they don't have 3-point shooting. And, so now teams at that level, they can play them differently. And that's where your analytics kick in. Hey, we know these guys are in the 20s shooting threes, so we're going to go with the percentages here's our defense. We're packed,
right.
And so I think that's kind of what, what happens when you get to that level, and the scouting involved too.
Yeah. So what does the future look like for you? Or do you like the mercenary for hire kind of role?
Basically, that's what I am now. So if somebody calls me, I'll listen to them. But no, I mean, I enjoy coming out, helping Carlotta out some throughout the season, and looks like I'm gonna go down to Mexico and do some clinics for a month or so in January or February. So I'm kind of at the point in my career, I'm a mercenary coach for hire, I guess. You need help, or what? You wanna put in some pressure D, or you want, some experience. I mean, I think, you're just realistic. I mean, our league, you have a lot of good young coaches coming up, and I'm really, supportive of good young women coaches coming up and coaching. And I think it's, we didn't have that when I first started. There just wasn't as many good women coaches for the pro level, but I think you find now a lot of ex-players, a lot of coaches, a lot of good young women coaches, and I think that's good. That's good for the WNBA and college as well.
Yeah. Well, getting them on the men's side too. I mean, there's been some excellent women coaches on the men's side.
Yeah.
Where's home base for you? You're not in Susanville still, are you?
No, I have daughter in San Diego, so I'll go down there, and then obviously up here. My folks live in Seattle, and I go up and visit them occasionally. I have a home in Oklahoma still from coaching there, so I'm out there some too. So kind of bounce around a little bit during the season. Yeah,
mercenary lifestyle.
Mercenary.
You got some frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, right. I'm just about ready to get this gold for Delta. So yeah.
That's nice.
What's your favorite WNBA city, and what WNBA city do you think has the best fan base?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Las Vegas is really good right now. Those guys are excited, and obviously they won it, but they have a nice arena right there. They get a good enthusiastic crowd in there. I mean, Seattle is really good too. I mean, they have that great core fan base, and that new arena is just very nice. So yeah, those are probably the two that stand out. Connecticut's really good too. They have a kind of a unique situation, Mohegan Sun Arena, and they get a good crowd in there. So Minnesota, it's always hard to play in. It's loud in there, and they're kind of rabid. So several of the cities are good, and I know they're talking about expanding to, I've heard Nashville, or a few different cities. I think would be the Bay Area. I think would be ripe for a team. I think they'd really draw there. Yeah. So
how long until the Sonics are back?
And then that's got to be close. I mean, I would say within, maybe not next season, but the following. I think just takes them some time to get there. But I know that's the next team. I think that they want to get. Seattle and Las Vegas, I think, are on the radar for that.
So you think they're going to expand? They're not going to move a team?
I think they'll expand, yeah, because I just don't. I mean, all the teams I think are pretty in the NBA, or their value's gone up, and I know it would take. Yeah, I think that would be the route they would go, is expansion.
When you were with the Storm, was Mercedes Russell on your team?
Yeah, in Mercedes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's an Oregon girl.
Yeah, she's from Portland.
Springfield, Oregon.
Springfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she was good. She really developed. This year she had some health issues, but she's really developed into a solid WNBA
she was
player.
She was a little younger than I was, but
Oh.
she was always so fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I got to watch her in high school, and then when she was at Tennessee, and so I know her family. So
do you?
I'm always rooting for her.
Yeah. No, she's a really good person. Yeah, and she's getting better. I mean, she's still a good young player. She's getting better and better, but just smart. You know, she can. We ended up running. You know, that last year, the year I was there, not this past season, but the before, we'd run a lot of offense through her because she was just so smart. You know,
Skilled,
and so and then usually they wouldn't pressure the 5, so we'd get it to her and let her orchestrate at the top and some of the 5-out stuff. So, but yeah, she's a good one.
Who's been your favorite player to coach throughout your entire career?
Oh man, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of players. I mean, Tamika Catchings was fierce, and you know, she was just kind of the blue collar, tough-minded, defensive. I mean, good offensive player, but really she hung her hat on
athletic,
being a defensive player. I mean, and Stewart, really, really good. Just a consummate pro. A great player, but just also just a great person off the floor. Very humble, you know, kind of always looking out for everybody. So, you know, but yeah, they've all been. It's you know, it's just it's been a great opportunity. I've really been blessed to be able to coach at that level with the top women players, you know, in the world. It's been a great journey. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Have you ever got to experience any overseas coaching?
I did.
You said you've done a lot of clinics and whatnot.
Yeah, I did. 1 year coached in Venezuela. Yeah,
Oh,
I went
wow,
down
that's
there and that was wild. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, I'll never forget. I mean, the fans are just, you know, you've seen those fans at those soccer games, like in Europe. That's the way they are, man. And they throw, like, if their team loses, they throwing stuff at the bus when you leave, and yeah, it's intense. Yeah, just kind of chaotic. Yeah, but I was down in the Venezuelan Pro League one year as a
women's
it was a men. That was men coaching men. Yeah, so it was.
What year was that?
Man, back in early 2000, I think. I can't remember exactly what date it was. I want to say 2001 or so. It's been a while, but yeah, it was. I don't even think they have a league now. It was still the country was halfway stable back in those days. You know, not like now. I don't even know if they have a league.
That's what I was wondering.
So
when we hear about Venezuela, it's usually not good. So I was wondering.
It was fairly stable. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. You know, it wasn't. I mean, all of those countries it's really difficult just because there's so many poor people, and it's, you know. But at that time, at least it was fairly stable politically, and unlike now. So. But yeah, it was interesting. The travel around. We'd play. One of the teams was in Islas Margaritas, which is this beautiful Caribbean island. I'll never forget. We went out there, and it was so humid that the floor was just players were just slipping all over, and they played. It was like they'd come out and mop it, and then get back out there, and players were just flying around, and we played the game. I mean, yeah, it was pretty wild. Yeah, man. Yeah.
What's some advice you got for younger coaches coming up in the industry?
I mean, I think the one thing is just being able to really support the head coach in whatever they need. You know, in the loyalties, I think the biggest thing I see coming up. You know, because things can get difficult. It's not going to always be a bed of roses. It can be hard. You're going to go through those losing streaks. You know, you're going to have players that are unhappy, and, you know, you're going to have that negativity. And I think as an assistant, you got to try to alleviate that, take on as much of that as you can, in communication with the players. So really developing that relationship with the players that the head coach, the head coach is always going to kind of be the bad guy at some point. But the assistants, you can kind of, you can intercede and really be that liaison, I think, to help those young players when they're going through some adversity like that,
I've become a much better assistant coach after being a head coach.
Yeah.
Even though at these low levels I was a junior college head coach, but coming back and being an assistant coach, I have a lot better feel for what the head coach needs. And that's what you said was really great advice.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the biggest thing you can do, is to really try to take some weight off that coach and implement, really learn the best way you can help implement what the head coach wants to do philosophically. And then I think too, be aggressive in being in your, putting your voice out there. I mean, I always wanted my assistants, they tell me what's, tell me the truth, tell me the truth. Or do you have anything, what do you have that can help us get better? And I think that's part of the head coach, like let your assistants coach and delegate some too. But I think as an assistant, like, you don't want to be just a yes man. You're like, hey, and it's not personal, but sometimes you got to tell the head coach, hey man, this player, man, he's killing you. Or that coach, that this lineup is just not these, you can't play him as much. Or, I think just some examples, but I think you have to be forthright and aggressive and, telling what you see, as a staff. And I think most head coaches want that. I think I always did, because ultimately you're trying to win and you can't have an ego about it. Even as much as we have egos, you all win together and you lose together. So you have to really have that staff on the same page, and then the players, they usually fall in line. If you have that, they usually pick up on that. Hey, these guys, they really are together. They know what they're doing. I can go talk to him. I mean, I can, and it's, family. Right. You develop that family with your team, whether it's a good team or even not a good team, maybe it's not that good of a team, but you can still have that. Right. Like you're coming out every night and competing, and ultimately that's where you want to get to, Yeah.
I think it's been that way for both. We talked about both the men's and women's coaches here as programs. It seems like it's like that too. We've had a few of our guys mention how we're all connected and we're all supporting Coach Zozal, and it really feels like that for the women, seeing it from here. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it's a unique situation. I mean, it's really good. You don't see that often. I mean, these
rarely, in my experience, a lot less than yours, but
a lot. And then, I think you see, and I think this level is unique because you don't have that extreme pressure to win all the time. Mm-hmm. I think that you have at Division I where it's a different outlook.
Yeah.
You hear, that you want to win, obviously, but, you want to develop that core culture and you'll be good if you have that, because that level player you're going to get, they're going to find out about, hey, Southern Oregon, they got a great coaching staff up there. I love the way they play. And it takes a few years and then players are calling you, and that are pretty good players,
Yeah. Do you have any advice for young people at Southern Oregon, student athletes here, or people in general?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, not to, I guess if I'd say anything is to really enjoy and appreciate, the situation you have. Sometimes things don't look like they're going good, or, you can dwell on the negative. You couldn't ask for a better place to be. You have coaches that really care about you, a great small university where you can really get where you want to get to in a beautiful place. So I can't think of that many places in the United States to go to school that are as nice as this, and then you have such a great, just a really good small town atmosphere, yet you have everything you need to have a good time or whatever you need to do, and I think that's the thing, is just appreciate it, because it goes by pretty quick. and then you're out there, trying to find a job. So enjoy that, enjoy the experience here, and and then keep trying to better yourself, trying to give back to your community, give to your team, to help them get better as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome,
Thanks for
guys.
talking with us. We have one final gift from our sponsor, Northwest Pizza and Pasta.
Oh, great. Thank you, Northwest Pizza.
A little gift card there.
I'm going to be in there.
A
All
dinner,
right.
a lunch. And,
good deal. Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Thank
you.
Thanks again for coming on. This was incredible.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I appreciate it. Anytime. Yeah.
We'll talk to you soon.
Hot take for the road.
Yeah, you have any hot takes you want to throw out before we go?
Like
About life, basketball, anything.
like
We like to ask our guests at the end if they have a
yeah, I
hot
mean,
take
I
for the
think
road.
the more I think I guess as I get older, just philosophically, don't get too far ahead of your skis. Enjoy. Try to keep yourself mindful and in the moment, because it's we're in a very sort of chaotic world, and there's things you can't beyond that you can control, but you can try to keep some level of tranquility and calmness within your own world, within yourself.
I like it.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Coach Gary Kloppenburg and the Running Raiders, we are out.
Thank you.